This is one of the most anticipated vehicles I've been waiting to drive over the last year at least. That's because there's a bit of controversy behind it, and that has to do with the name of it. This is the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Now, let's first talk about how this thing looks. It's clear there's some Mustang inspiration in the name. That's clear. The shape of the hood, the way the nose slopes down, the fenders, certainly the taillight treatment, and then of course you have badges all over the place. Badges don't make a car though. And this looks like a Mustang crossover, Mustang wagon. I wish it was slightly more wagon than it is, but I think the shape is intriguing. I think the wheels look good. I think this red paint looks good. I like the carbon looking badges. All that looks nice. Slide inside of the cabin. This is actually a really nice space. It feels premium. The materials being used here are pretty great. The vertical oriented tablet works well, responds quickly to touch. And then I like the almost minimalist gauge cluster behind the steering wheel. And depending on which driving mode you have, it can do some cool things, but still with the minimalist bent. Now, as far as powertrain goes, this specific Mach-E is a premium trim. That's the second one up. And then from there, it has an extended range battery pack and all-wheel drive. So it's an 88 kilowatt hour battery pack versus the 68 kilowatt hour standard battery pack and a rear-wheel drive setup. You can do a standard battery pack with rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, or you could do the extended battery pack with rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. So with two motors feeding two axles, no gearboxes, direct drive setup, we have 328 horsepower and 462 pound-feet of torque. It's pretty great. Our driving range in this setup is right around 250 miles. Actually, when I got in the car after a full charge, charging it overnight, it said 255 miles. The lowest range model is the standard range battery all-wheel drive system. It's rated to return about 211 miles. The highest range model is the extended range battery pack with the rear-wheel drive setup, and that is rated to return right around 300 or 305 miles. This is in the middle at 250. The base model is called the Select. This is the Premium. Then you have a version called the First Edition, which is extended range battery pack only all-wheel drive. And then there's the California Route 1 version, which is extended range only battery pack, rear-wheel drive only. And then coming soon is the GT and GT Performance Edition. Now that one is going to have 600 horsepower, something like 630 pound-feet of torque, and 630 plus pound-feet of torque, and Ford is targeting a 0 to 60 time of 3.5 seconds, so that one will whip. This one whips too. 0 to 60 is under 5 seconds, and it feels like it. It feels like that's the case. And the ride is comfortable. The brakes feel perfectly suited. The suspension damping could be adjusted a little bit. Sometimes it feels a little bit stiffer than it needs to be, but we're dealing with over 4,800 pounds of curb weightage happening here. And that makes the 0 to 60 run of under 5 seconds that much more amazing. But when you do come around a corner and mat the throttle, this thing goes. I'm not going to do that right now. That's a cop right there. Park ranger. So I have this in one of 3 driving modes. It is in unbridled, which is marketing speak for full whammy on the throttle response and the heftiest steering, and actually the most aggressive regen braking too, without going into one pedal driving. So you hit a button down here, it looks like a little Mach-E. It brings you to the drive modes. There's Engage, which is the normal driving mode, Whisper, which is more of a quiet, just relaxed driving mode, and then Unbridled. Unbridled adds some gold elements into the gauge cluster that glow brighter and longer as you dip into the throttle a bit more. It's a nice touch. You can also turn on and off the propulsion sound, the ambient light selection, all that good stuff. And getting back to the cabin for a second, this big tablet is pretty responsive, easy to use. Occasionally there were some weird features when I first got in it where I was hitting next track while using CarPlay and it wouldn't do it, and then the very next time I used the car, and every time since, it has used it. Every now and then to swipe up the driving modes menu takes a couple, because it thinks you are swiping in a different spot than you are, but every other touch has been pretty flawless. CarPlay integration is great. It's wireless CarPlay. The way they integrated the volume knob directly onto the screen is really cool. All the climate stuff works well. I don't have any major complaints there other than some occasional quirkiness. Now, since this is a tech-forward car being a modern electric vehicle, there's also some neat tech features in it that you can just use your phone as your key. You don't have to have the key in your pocket. You walk up with your phone, you can lock and unlock it, you can start it, you can do all that stuff. I think that's pretty cool because the key fobs are getting bigger and bulkier, and I hate them. I feel like they should be getting smaller. But you don't even need to use your phone as the key because this has the forward buttons to unlock on the door, which I guess Ford people really love. I've never really used them, but if you have them, a lot of people like that feature to lock and unlock right on the door using the IntelliCode security code thing. Now, they could take that a step further in this car and use the code to get in and out and then enter a password on the screen to be able to drive the car. So say you were going surfing or mountain biking or something where you didn't want to bring a key with you. That's awesome. That's a really cool feature to just be able to boop, 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 in, go. Don't need the key. I like that one a lot. But back to driving now, because that's what is the focus here and will draw us into the conversation of the name. So when you punch it, it goes. It's a lot of fun. And this is like the regular one and not the crazy GT one. The GT one is probably going to be pretty awesome. That propulsion sound, it's kind of cool because it's a blend of like EV Jetsons-esque, you know, there's a sound there, but they've made it almost have like a backing note of what you would hear with the V8, which is really funny, like under acceleration. I don't know if it's gonna pick it up. I'm gonna have to probably cut to GoPro audio for that, or if Ford has a clip. But it's kind of cool that they've modeled it so it's V8-esque, you know? I can appreciate that. It's cool, it's different. I like that. The steering feels nice. I mean, it's electric, obviously, power steering, but it has proper heft for the vehicle. And then if you're in the whisper driving mode, it's lighter, but I like it in unbridled. And I also really like that when you put it in a driving mode, it stays in that mode when you get in and out of the car, turning the car on and off. One pedal drive stays on, it stays how you want it, so you're not constantly hitting buttons, because that would get really annoying really fast. So it's been in unbridled almost the entire time I've had it, because Ford says the different driving modes don't affect the range, and that has to do with them altering the regen tuning in the different driving modes. So if you're driving hard and unbridled, you're also regenerating hard and unbridled. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I'd like to see some real-world testing from someone who is a qualified EV tester, like out-of-spec motoring. Kyle should test one of these and do, 250 miles in whisper, or just drive it how he would drive it, or drive it all the same, I should say, in the 3 different modes to see if range, the spread, the variance there. And if he does land within the same area, I think that's a pretty good achievement, actually. So let's get to price. The base price of a Mach-E is $42,895 before any destination or handling. And that is also before a $7,500 federal tax credit. So you got to factor that in too. This one, as tested, is $56 because it's the second trim up, and then the extended range battery pack is another $5,000 hit right off the top. But I feel like you would get the extended range battery pack. 200 miles is fine, but that's not going to alleviate range anxiety for some people. Charging this at home, no issue, plug it right in, good to go. I have a 240 outlet, so I have no issues there. But this can charge up to, it speeds up to 150 kilowatts, DC fast charging, which is always a nice to have. Ford says it'll go from 10 to 80% in 45 minutes, which, I would like to see that closer to 30, but whatever. But another cool feature it does have, which I have not experienced yet in any electric vehicle, is if you charge this at an Electrify America station, normally you have to enter, go in the app, select which one you're on, plug it in, give it a minute. With this car at an EA station, you just grab it and plug it in and go, because it has some, I forget what the term is, I'm gonna look it up and put it in here, but it's some kind of immediate handoff, immediate handshake situation where it's like, oh, it's this car, it's this account on file, boom, start charging right away. And that's really cool. I like that. I might have to try that real quick before I give the car back. So the GT will probably wind up being well into the $60,000 range, but for a 600 horsepower EV that can run from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, that's pretty good. Like I said, the interior feels a cut above. The driving experience is actually really nice. Now, the only problem we're coming back to, which some people will have, and it really doesn't bother me that much, is the name. Ford is calling it the Mustang to draw attention to it. So they did Mustang-inspired styling. They put the pony badges on it. I mean, there's really nothing about this that is Mustangness, though. I don't think Ford needed to do that. I get why they did it. It gets the people talking. I don't think they needed to do that. And I will stand by my assertion that this should be called the Galaxy, Galax-E. This would be an awesome return to the Galaxy name in North America. Yes, I know there's a Galaxy in other parts of the world, but that name is, those vehicles are not befitting of that wonderful name of yore. If this was the Ford Galaxy and they could have done cheesy space-inspired touches inside, which would have been awesome. Let's be real here. The space-inspired touches on the GMC Hummer EV are super cheesy and also awesome at the same time because it's fucking space, and space is amazing. So if this was the Ford Galaxy, and when you turned it on, it like did swirling stars and stuff, and the different modes were like, oh, it's hot as Mercury today, like shit like that. That would be pretty cool. But I'm also not upset that it is called the Mustang. I just don't think it's necessary. That's all. But I would never buy that. It's not a Mustang. My neighbor loves Fords. He has an 09 Mustang. They also have an Explorer and a Ranger. And he's been eyeing this, and he really likes it. He's like, I don't get why they called it Mustang, but I like the car. So they didn't need to call it Mustang. And I stand by that. But as it sits, if you were thinking about an EV and you weren't going to try this one simply because it has the Mustang name, that's ridiculous. You'd be depriving yourself of a very good vehicle here. This thing is great. This thing is really good. I like this thing a lot. I like this more than the e-tron. And it's, significantly less expensive and just as nice inside. The Audi's nice, but these seats are super comfortable. Ford did a really good, I was going to say Mustang did a really good job. It's becoming its own brand. Ford did a really good job here. So I'm quite pleasantly surprised with, I didn't expect to hate it, but I do really like it. This is a really, really good car. Yeah. Another fun feature, though, that I forgot to mention during my driving portion, with the all-wheel drive system, if you mat this out of a corner, it will get playful and want to bring the back end around. So maybe there is some Mustang DNA in there somewhere. I would really like to try this without traction control in a space where I have room to make errors, because it feels like, despite the hefty boy curb weight, those electric motors want to play and have some fun, and that's pretty cool. So maybe there's a little bit of Mustang DNA. Not a ton, but a little bit. Controversy. Going up the hill. This. Past this Focus. This thing pulls. This thing pulls. It's good. It's a good car. It's a good car. EV car runs good.